Good morning. It's a beautiful day outside, hopefully inside, and hopefully by the time we finish this service today, there'll be a beautiful place in your heart as well. Elaine is going to light the chalice for us. We invite any young at heart to come and help with the chalice lighting. Times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Thank you, Elaine. The opening words today are the poem by Mary Oliver, Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it does. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you about mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to one and all. I'm glad you have joined us in worship today with the community of the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. I'm Douglas Liebriger, it says so here in my notes, worship coordinator for today's service. A special welcome to visitors, whether you are joining us online or in person. This congregation is a community of all ages and abilities. It is a community with a rainbow of gender and sexual identities. It is a community of diverse cultural and class backgrounds. We draw from many sources of inspiration and share common liberal religious values. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. Each week we acknowledge that where we meet for worship as the First Unitarian Church of Omaha is the land of the Omaha Oto Nations, and that indigenous people in the greater community have become marginalized and made invisible. May we recognize their presence among us and work with them to resolve the issues of poverty, displaced children, and murdered and missing indigenous women, the MMIW. And a special welcome to our guests, Richard and Jan Potter. Richard will be speaking on the universal heart. The talk will share some of the key concepts of Potter's new book, to be released hopefully by fall. The book has the same name, The Universal Heart. Following the suggestions from Einstein, Potter puts forth that you can't resolve problems with the same thinking that created them. Potter will discuss today's need for a different, more expansive type of consciousness and the road we can follow to create it. Many will remember Jan and Richard Potter from a few years past, our Universal Dances of Peace, Sufi dancing in the common room. Oh, we should get back to those. As well as the Universal Worship services on New Year's Day, which Jan and Richard led right here in the sanctuary. Music today by Mary Thomas and Stan Harper. Wise Up by Amy Mann.
Testing. It's not what you thought when you first began it. You got what you want. Now you can hardly stand it, though by now you know, but it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop till you wise up. You're sure there's a cure. One will shrink you down until you're underground and living down, but it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop till you wise up. Prepare a list for what you need before you sign away the deed, 'cause it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop till you wise up. No, it's not going to stop till you wise up. No, it's not going to stop till you wise up.
I'm so glad Mary came over from Lincoln today. Thank you. And now also from Lincoln, and Christina Strong is going to do the story for all ages.
Okay. Our story today is Aaron Slater, Illustrator. And it's a beautiful book. At the end of the garden, in the soft fading light, when the day turns to dusk and the dusk into night, the sweet scent of jasmine floats into the air to mix with the music of laughter, and there, Aaron D. Slater soaks it all in, with his flowery blanket tucked under his chin. Words drift like music, melodious, mild, a sweet summer song for a sweet summer child who drifts off to sleep as the cottonwoods sway at the end of the garden, at the end of the day. It's summer, then summer, and summer once more, and soon Aaron D. is a youngster of 4. The jasmine climbs higher, the roses have grown, and Aaron himself has a spot of his own. for seedlings and saplings besides the slate walk, which he illustrates daily with a bucket of chalk. But what he loves most, what makes Aaron's heart sing, is to listen to books in the old garden swing. To write stories, he thinks, is the greatest of things. But first, he must read. It's the best place to start. And young Aaron wants to with all of his heart. But the words are just squiggles, and try, though he might. Even with help, Aaron can't get it right. Why can't I do it? Why is it so hard? He goes back to drawing on slate in his yard. I know you might be too far away to see the pictures, but the words are kind of like upside down and backwards for him. It's school time at last in his sunflower socks and poppy red jacket with matching lunchbox. He marches to class with the teacher's bouquet, ready to read by the end of the day. But he doesn't that day, or that month, or that year. And though he makes progress, it's painfully clear he'll never quite get it like all of his friends. Since he'll never stand out, he decides to blend in. And so here he is at the start of grade 2 in his simple white t-shirt and matching white shoes. He tries to keep up, to blend in and to hide the tangle of feelings he carries inside. At first, it goes well since his teacher is new and a bit overwhelmed by the hullabaloo, but things settle down and Miss Greer finds her stride. And once she gets going, there's no place to hide. Class, she says, here's an assignment for you. Write me a story, write something true. And so Aaron does what young Aaron must do. He works on his story like the rest of grade 2. He writes through the evening, he writes through the night. He writes and he writes till the dawn's early light. Then he drags off to school with his shoes filled with lead, and his stomach in knots and a pain in his head. And he waits for his turn with his heart filled with dread. Miss Greer calls his name, and Aaron D. stands and unfolds his sheet in his trembling hands. And he reads, well, he tries, but it's so hard to start, with 33 eyes peering into his heart. So he stares at his shoes and his sunflower socks, then he closes his eyes, and then young Aaron talks. Once there was a flower. No, wait, I know. Once there was a magical flower, which gave all who held it extraordinary power. And so begins the most perfect of tales of an imperfect hero whose courage fails when the day turns to dusk and the dusk into night and the moon rises high and the dragons take flight, and who learns after all in the wee morning hours strength comes from the heart and not magical flowers, that beauty and kindness and loving and art lend courage to all with a welcoming heart. There's an illustration of his story. I like that his teacher is riding the dragon. And when the quest ends and the sweet flower dies, the students all gasp and Miss Lila Greer cries. The silence that follows rattles his heart. He tries to say something, but where could he start? He turns in a paper with no words at all, then blinks back a tear and escapes to the hall, where Miss Lila finds him by the slate-covered wall. Time stops for them both, the teacher and boy. His heart feels with anguish, and hers feels with joy at the soul of this artist, courageous and true. She smiles and she whispers, "Aaron, thank you." When she leaves, Aaron stands there a very long while. Then slowly, so slowly, he begins to smile. And he feels like he does with those books in the swing, and a new hope inside starts to make his heart sing. He knows he can do the greatest of things in a way that's his own, in a way that's just his. He can stand out and show the world who he is. Like the mightiest flames that banish the dark, hope grows in the soul from the tiniest spark. His art makes the difference, his art leads the way, and helps him discover what he wants to say. And his reading gets better. Of course, it's still tough, but each day that they work is a little less rough. Like all imperfect heroes at the start of a quest, he must do what he can and hope for the best. Now in the hallway, a new garden grows, with jasmine and poppies, a rambling rose, books, art, and music, a dragon or two, who soar through the sky of delphinium blue. The art tells a story, melodious, mild, furious, fragrant, wonderful, wild. It's all from the heart, and all of it's true. For Aaron, Miss Greer, and the kids of grade 2, it's a place full of beauty for one and for all, the illustrator's garden at the end of the hall. And I want to read just a bit from the author's note. Aaron Douglas Slater is named after Aaron Douglas, an African-American painter, muralist, and graphic artist who lived from 1899 to 1879. He was a key figure in the Harlem Renaissance. Learning to read is hard for Aaron Slater. His brain has difficulty identifying how speech sounds relate to letters and words. Aaron has dyslexia, just like 15 to 20% of all people. There are many other learning difficulties people may have. For instance, dysgraphia is difficulty learning to write. Dyscalculia is a form of difficulty doing math. Some people have difficulty focusing, which is called attention deficit disorder, ADD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. These learning problems are not about a person's intelligence, creativity, kindness, willingness to work, or their general awesomeness. They're just about how the person's brain works. All of these difficulties and many others can be frustrating, but tools and special instruction from educators and others can help. Aaron's dyslexia informs who he is, but it does not define who he is. Thank you.
Every creative person needs an understanding teacher. What a good lesson. Thank you. I'm going to lead a guided meditation today. Excuse me. These are called meditation. I use them in many classes, and because kids, young adults, come from so many different religious and spiritual backgrounds, I call them more like quieting and centering. So I invite you to quiet and center this morning. Before we begin, I'd like to teach you or review with you an Arabic word, Ya Fatah. Has many meanings. One possible meaning is, I open my heart to you. And that's the way I intend to use it today. So if you can and if you will, find a comfortable place, comfortable position, feet on the floor or in the air, spine fairly erect. Take those nice deep breaths all the way in and all the way out. And just find that place to quiet and center. I invite you to place your hands over your heart in any position. I like to place my left hand over my heart and my right hand over my left hand. It's just a way of doing it. And sink into a deep listening space for your heart's longing. You can have a little dialogue with your heart. Might be your physical heart, spiritual heart, your soul. And just see, with your listening ear, what your heart has to say. And you might think about what you would wish for yourself and what you would wish for others. And then, with your heart, with your hand still over your heart, you can begin to open your eyes. Look around. See the light. See where the light is coming from. Love these clear windows. See if there's some darkness or some shadows. in the room, and colors. As I look out at you here in the sanctuary, I see bright colors, all different kinds of colors. What do you see? And other people. You can look around if you want to. And I'll look into the cameras for the people on Zoom or YouTube. And then, with an open heart, with your hands still on your heart, I'm going to invite you to fling your hands out and say with me, Yafata, Yafata. I open my heart to you, Yafata. All right, thank you. And now, I think if Colin has them on screen, Colin is going to share. Does he have a microphone? Oh, he's getting one. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Oliver. Sure appreciate these tech people. They keep us in line, keep us going.
We have some joys and concerns submitted in advance here. One from Harriet Major called last week and said, thanks to all my First UU friends for many calls and cards on my birthday. You made the day extra special. And also from Jessica and Taylor Iman. Eleanor and Meredith had their first birthday on March 31st. They are both starting to walk on their own, love to climb, and want to do anything Big Brother Ezra is doing. And we have one as well here from Nellie Chenoweth. And it is a concern, as she said that my sister-in-law passed last weekend. Thoughts to my 15-year-old niece during this time. So sending thoughts, positive prayers out to her and stuff. Let's see if anything comes up in the chat here. Just waiting. Give it a couple more minutes here. You're not seeing anything come up in the chat this time. So,
if you're online, you can still go ahead and put in joys and concerns. They will be published in the Joys and Concerns newsletter. Thank you, Colin. Yafata, our hearts go out to those people. Just to mention one person, Harriet Major, belated happy 99th birthday to her. So our congratulations. Harriet, I know you're out there in Cyberland. Okay, I think. Okay. And now it's time for the offering. Here in the sanctuary, the ushers will pass the plates. At home, there's a Zoom link. Each month, 1/2 of the loose currency in the Sunday offering plate is donated to a cause with a local presence which advances important principles of Unitarian Universalism. Our Share the Plate recipient for April is our very own meal prep team for YES, Youth Emergency Services. Each month, church member Kim Callahan and her volunteers, she's raising her hand there and back, and her team prepare a meal in the church kitchen. It's quite a production. And then deliver that meal to YES, which is a shelter for youth in the Omaha area. Thank you. Thank you, Stan Harper, for that joyous sound. Terry Lynn Brewer to do the reading.
I'm reading some quotes from Tibetan Buddhist monk, or nun, excuse me, children. The truth you believe and cling to makes you unavailable to hear anything new. If we learn to open our hearts, anyone, including the people who drive us crazy, can be our teachers. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It is a relationship between equals. Only when we own our own darkness can we be present with the darkness of others. And compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. You are the sky, and everything else is just the weather. Rather than letting our negativity get the best of us, we could acknowledge the right now by taking a good look. The most difficult times for many of us are the ones we give ourselves. Truth you believe and cling to makes you unavailable to hear anything now new. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce a longtime friend of mine. I associate Richard Potter with the mystical thinking of the Sufis, like Rumi, for example, who teach us to go beyond the bounds of what we have been taught to think, to the realms of the universal mind. I expect Richard to go in that area, in that realm today. So as Rumi says, I have it right here. What did Rumi say? Well, Rumi said something like, I would trade my tongue for 100 ears and place them over my heart. Richard, you take over.
Thank you, Douglas. I always forget when I haven't been here in a while What a beautiful building this is. And the people that are called to this building tend to be people who want to think about things that are more important than what we spend most of our... There we go. Well, is that good? So, it's a pleasure to be here today. Douglas had wanted me to talk a little bit about, just a little bit about Sufism, and then talk a little bit more about what I've been doing lately. And for some of you who don't know, I spent almost 30 years teaching social work at Dana College. And when Dana closed, my wife and I went and taught a few other places for a few years, and now we're retired. People ask me after I retired, well, what do you do? And the answer was, my God, I can get high and I don't have to go down again. I can just, follow wherever I want to go, whatever kind of track my spiritual development is on. I don't have to take time out for all those other things anymore. I can just follow that track. So retirement has been wonderful for me. I studied Sufism I was born into a family of mystics. And so I've been studying the inner world for a very, very long time. And for 42 years, I've studied Sufism. And one of the important things, that whole term studied Sufism is wrong. Sufism is experience. All the various things that you do when you meditate, when you do sound practices like Yafatah, all of those sorts of things are methodology. They're tools for consciousness, for the growth of consciousness. And what Sufism is really about is experience and experiencing consciousness in different ways, hopefully more and more refined, more and more beautiful ways. Sufism is also, if you had to say just a few words, you would use the words of Socrates, know thyself. So, before I start actually doing some things with the mind, and by the way, I always said this in my classes to my students, don't believe a word I say. Really don't. What you really need, what you could do if you want, is to take what I say and use it to stimulate your own thinking. Because it's really, every single person has their own spiritual path. We use these larger tools put forth by spiritual schools to get us to a place, to have the tools to discover ourselves. That's what it's all about. So and to give you a hint about what I'm talking about, there's something that I'd like you to have in the background of your thinking, in the background of your mind for the next 20 or so minutes. And that is, in the ocean of consciousness, we are each a wave. So if you could just imagine yourself as a wave of consciousness rising and becoming an individual consciousness, and then falling back into the vast ocean of consciousness and being merged with all consciousness, whether we're talking about plants, animals, human beings, and beings on all kinds of other planes. We rise and we then merge. And we rise again and we merge again. With that just as a thought in the background, we can talk a little bit more. When I talk about the book that I've been writing, actually Jan and I have been writing together for the last couple of years, The pandemic was a perfect time for us because we just got to stay home and write. So the book is pretty much finished except for some editing. Now it's just a matter of getting a publisher to agree with us. So what's been going on, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm sure all of you have, things are a little weird in the world right now. We're in a phase as humanity that is different than what we've been in a while. And so it dawned upon me that it's time to start, human beings have to begin in larger numbers to have higher consciousness if we're going to do what Einstein said and begin to think in a different way so we can solve the problems our old ways of being have created. You know, global climate change is a really good example. But there are many other things going on right now, as all of you know. So with these kinds of crises we face in the world, it would be good if we could begin to think from a different perspective. And that's what the book is about. Some things just that we need to look at as the ground of this is that thinking comes from consciousness. Consciousness is our awareness at all kinds of different levels. And I won't go into most scientists trying to discover what consciousness is, and we'll talk about how the brain works and how they haven't yet figured out how the brain produces consciousness. Well, as a lifelong mystic, I don't think the brain does produce consciousness. The brain is the filter through which consciousness flows. And it's wonderful to have the brain for consciousness, our consciousness, to flow through and to become apparent in the world. But consciousness is something greater than that. It's that ocean that rises and falls in our beings. So, two quotes. First quote is from the Prophet Muhammad. This is from not the Quran, this is from the religious hadith, which are the sayings of Muhammad. I was a hidden treasure and I desired to be known. He's speaking in God consciousness, saying, as God, I was a hidden treasure and I desired to be known. Carl Jung put it this way just a few years ago. The emerging myth of the future of humanity is the purpose of human life is the creation of consciousness. Our job as human beings right now is to become more conscious, to take what is unconscious, to take what is global, to take what is universal, and make it more conscious. So Jung was saying that that's what all of our myths of now should be, how we become more conscious. So I'm going to just tell you a brief story of something that happened to me a few years ago that started this whole process that is now culminated in this book. I was contacted by a guy who was a professor in California, and he said he had read my book several times, which is amazing, since I think maybe only about 6,000 people in the whole world read that first book. And he said he had read my book several times and he'd really like to meet me, and he wanted to know where he could meet me, maybe in Chicago or something like that. And so we set up a meeting, and then something happened and he wasn't able to make it. And so then he called me and he said, I'd like you to speak, to be on a panel at the United Nations Women's Conference in 2016. And I'm like, what? Because he represented this group called the Sant Nirtani Fellowship. And so I said, let's talk about this. So basically, after some conversation and all that, I ended up being on a panel at the UN Women's Conference in 2016. And my topic was supposed to be this Satnaratani group is a group that does development work across the world. There are, apparently it's out of India, but there are, many millions of people who belong to this organization, support it, and do development work throughout the world. So I was supposed to be on this panel, or I was on this panel, where there were several people talking about the development work that was done across the world. And I was supposed to talk about, I was the final panel member, supposed to talk about how spirituality helps in doing this kind of charity development work. And given that as a task, obviously I had to do some thinking. And what I began to realize is the same thing that is this meditation that's going on right now. That as we develop consciousness, as we work, as we do our inner work, a couple things happen. One of those things that happens is we begin to know ourselves. And the second thing that happens is as we begin to know ourselves, we begin to know our connectedness, our unity with the natural world, with human beings that we share our lives with, and human beings that we have no idea who they are. This inner work, knowing oneself, helps one to know all. It opens up our understanding of our unity with all. And if we begin to feel and understand that unity, how in the world can we allow our neighbor to suffer? How is that possible if we know who we are? To allow our neighbors to not have what they need. And so spiritual development can lead not only to better development work, but it can lead to our wanting to do more and more for our fellow human beings. There's a wonderful quote that's like a 3-page long quote. And it talks about all these things that we begin to do as we grow and expand our consciousness. And the last line is, and be of some small service to our fellow human beings. So with that presentation, it wasn't such a big deal. It was in a building other than the UN building, and it was maybe 40 people in the room. But it was an opportunity for me, at least, to really examine the relationship of my spirituality, the relationship of my inner work to what to do in the world and what the world needs. And so what I am saying in my book on universal, well, I started it calling it universal consciousness, but then I realized universal heart is more appropriate, not only because it's probably a better title, but because the mind can only take us so far. And then when you start really working inwardly, there are emotions that are subtle and gentle and very refined, that begin to emerge between your thoughts, between your words. And it's the workings of that which is beyond words and beyond I mean, the mind is constrained. It's very constrained by the language we have to express what's going on. However, the heart, the emotions, the subtle, gentle, quiet emotions that emerge in the midst of our busy lives, and we go, oh, that's what it is. That's the heart beginning to speak what the mind can't. And so that's why we're calling this book The Universal Heart, because we need to go beyond what our language and what our typical knowing in the world will allow us to do. We need to find that which emerges from the spaces between our thoughts. And that's why we meditate, by the way. That's one of the main reasons for meditation. So, the whole idea that I hope all of you will think about is, for thousands and thousands of years, small groups of people have sought what was called spiritual enlightenment, knowledge, whatever. Small groups of people. In order for the human collective to change, we need more of us. I'm not saying everybody needs to get enlightened. I'm not even saying larger groups of people need to get whatever enlightened is. That's not even a very good, nobody's enlightened. Lots of people have little moments of clarity. And that's a really good thing, to have moment of clarity. But what we need is more of us to have those moments of clarity. More of us to have consciousness which begins to enliven the heart area, enliven those feelings and that unity that we can experience in those moments. The more of us that do that, the more the collective changes. And I think that those of us who've been paying attention to what's going on in the world right now are aware that the collective needs to change. And we can only do that one person at a time and influence the collective consciousness of humanity. We are the ocean, not just the wave. I think maybe I've used up all of my time, maybe more than what I had, but I thank you very much.
We're going to sing a hymn out of the Teal Hymnal 10:08, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
Stand as you are able and as you wish.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Everybody. The closing words, I've chosen Rumi again. Let the beauty we love be what we do. Today, like every day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are 100 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. With that, I will go over and blow out the chalice, and at home you can do the same.